Hi, my name is Jeremy Eschliman. I'm going to talk today about group facilitation. This is for the class Managerial Communications, Business 620, Dr. Laura Dinger. This is the final oral project, about 10 minutes. Have you ever been in a meeting that after about an hour or so, towards the end, for an hour meeting, you feel like it was a waste of time? As a group, you're supposed to come up with some sort of consensus, and you didn't. And you've been, at least myself, I've been in other meetings where there's been a facilitator there. You set out to do something over the course of the hour. Then at the end, like, wow, where'd that hour go? This just went so well. Well, facilitators use something called focused conversation. When this is used, it's used when discussing sensitive or political issues to collect qualitative data, opinions of those people that are usually samples of throughout the community. It's to just generally increase understanding of an issue, how big it is, how broad it is, and it's a good way to avoid one-sided arguments. A lot of times we get a bunch of people together, everyone has their own opinion of what's going on. This is a good way to kind of diffuse that and just explore the different opinions in a very neutral way. This is how it works. Focused conversation follows typical human processes that are unconscious to us. Think when you walk up to a conversation that's already occurring, what do? You generally observe those that are present. So maybe there's 2 or 3, 4, 5 people present. You immediately become aware of what's going on in the conversation. Maybe the smells, the tastes, what people are wearing, things like that. You interpret what's being said. So you get a context of what the conversation is about. And you have a chance to respond. You can respond by interjecting in the conversation, being silent, not saying anything, or leaving the conversation. Ultimately, what we're after is through the skillful use of these products, we can create a collective thought product of the whole group. A couple things that we need to really set out to do and be very clear and transparent when being a facilitator are coming up with aim statements. We have 2 different aim statements that I like to talk about. One's a rational aim, and another one's an experimental aim. Sorry. What the group needs to know is the rational aim, and it's basically the product at the end that we need. So we need to make a decision as a group of this is what we're going to do. The experimental aim is what else happens. Does the group collectively come together and we have consensus on this group? We work more closely together. It's really the inner impact of what we're working on. The role of facilitator is important to define. Some facilitators are part of the discussion, some are not. What I'm really talking about, the role of facilitator, is as a third party. If step back as a process expert, somebody that can work through the logistics of somebody has this opinion, somebody else has that opinion. How do we get together to come to a common ground? They're content neutral. They don't say when somebody has an idea, they say, that's a great idea. They don't make a judgment call on that idea. And they're not a substantive decision maker. They don't decide, yeah, that's really the direction we need to go with that. They let the group really find its own way. Now, the acronym I'd like you to remember is called ORID, O-R-I-D. The O stands for objective. It's really engaging our 5 senses. Reflective is talking about our knowledge, our experiences. Interpretive is the sharing and meaning of those to us. And decisional is obviously making a decision about what we've talked about. Now, on objective senses, it's really about getting the facts out. What we see, what we smell, getting a little bit of our personal history. We don't realize how much of our personal history influences our thoughts and opinions. Typically, that information comes out easily. The next one, there's actually some words and phrases that elicit that information, or some examples are, what did you see when I said that? What words caught your attention or stand out? Who is there in your vision? Now, the R in ORID, reflective, really deals with your heart. It's our personal reactions that we've had, associations we made in the past, maybe some people that have passed on that we know, emotions, images, those are all very vivid things that we hold very closely, and we don't realize when we're in groups, a word, a phrase, a sound really pull on our heartstrings and create emotion. What we want to do is get that out. It is what it is, but we need to be very conscious of that. Some examples. Uh, what made you most excited or scared? What was inspiring? What part reminds you of your own experience? What concerns you? The next I in ORID, ORI, is interpretative. Really, what does that mean to us? And kind of cuts to our values, the significance, the purpose, the implications. Some examples of interpretive type questions are, what is the importance of this? It really brings it to a high level of thought. So we've went through the senses, kind of what we see, smell, and our vision, up to what personal experiences have we had, to what do we think about this? What lies below the surface? What other things do we need to consider? What options are open to us? What difference will this really make? Those are all engaging the rational part of our thought. The last letter in the acronym ORID is D, decisional, and it's really action. And this is probably, by this point in the conversation, it is probably the most important part, but it typically comes fairly easily in most groups because if you the flow of it just goes so naturally. But it's the resolution to do something, it's action, the future direction, the next steps. Some great examples of questions that we can use are, what is this really all about? What does this mean for the future? What's the next step that we need to take? Now, typical structure can be a few minutes to an hour. And I'll lay out just an example of what it's like for an hour for an OR conversation, which you think, well, that's an awful long time. But some topics are so heated and so intense that we really want to allow a lot of time, especially with groups of 15, 20 people, to get through this process because the end result is just so important. With our aims, we really want to set out, this is what our objective aim is, this is what our experimental aim is. We get into like about 5-minute visioning, which is, we'll say kind of what the topic is, if it's cancer, for example, on a health topic, or maybe it's on creating city parks, or on with our animal center. It could be something like that. How do we create an animal center in Wayne, Nebraska? So we spend some time doing that. Then we get into the focus conversation where we say, with the objective part, what are your senses telling you? What do you see? What do you smell? The reflective, the interpretive. With the reflective, about 12 minutes. The interpretive, 15 minutes. Really, what does this mean to us? Decisional, 10 minutes. Okay, so what's the next step look like? And we want to spend about 5 minutes to closing. We want to really value people's time, thank them for coming, and just put a nice ending. And all in all, things said, that's about 55 minutes, and it can be intense, but really before you know it, the time is over. Just to summarize in closing, focused conversations, specifically using ORID, can result in great group collective work. And it's important to go through this process. It sets a stage for the next step, which is strategic planning and action. And by going through this step, we alleviate a lot of the conflict that can occur in a group because everyone's had the chance to kind of experience the same thing. Maybe it's Bob, working with Beth, and Bob had a really traumatic experience early as a child. Beth is conscious of that and takes that into consideration when they're talking about whatever the strategic plan is, and it just makes more sense versus Bob having all these repressed feelings of anger because the decision was made, it wasn't what he wanted to because it results to something that happened back when. But in any case, it's a product that works. I've used it personally. I recommend it to anyone, and it's just something that I find really successful. Thank you for your time and have a good day.